Hello and welcome back to the Creative Writing Podcast. I'm recording this on another boiling hot day in the middle of London, so I hope wherever you are, there are perhaps some cooler weather and a lovely chance to get some words down on paper. The title of this episode is Bad Fairies, and we're following on from last week where we talked a little bit about good luck and good fairies. If you are not a magical folk tales kind of writer and you prefer to keep things rooted in the contemporary world, then don't worry, there's going to be plenty of ways for you to use that lens to do today's workshop. And we'll be having a look then at how your characters react to bad luck and what character traits do they reveal when things go wrong. But if you're someone who likes writing lots of kind of magic and fantasy in your stories, then this is one for you as well today. Um, so as always, this is a creative writing workshop. You'll need a pen and paper or the notes up on your phone. And this is all about getting words down on paper. I am a big believer that you should scribble down whatever you like and then come back to it, develop it, hone it, um, edit it. And by doing that over and over again, that's how you really come to terms with your craft and get better as a writer. So there are lots of writing advice podcasts out there, but this is really a doing podcast. And the idea really is that I take control of the time so that you can concentrate on getting the words down on paper. And it's inspired by the live workshops I give, where in some ways, I do exactly the same thing. You know, I talk a little bit about story, I set up a writing task, and then everybody kind of gets into their own head and their own imagination and gets on with things. So as always, we're going to begin with a warm up, and as always, the idea of the warm up is simply that you write whatever comes out of your head, and you don't worry about grammar and you don't worry about sentences, and really you just get to grips with the words flowing out of you one after the other onto the page. And it doesn't matter if you repeat words and images and mix up character names. It can be a good idea before you begin the warm up to decide if you're going to do it in first person. So I did this, I walked into the room, or third person. He did this, she did this. Simply because making that decision slightly before the warm up stops you from trying to make it while you're doing it. So, in honour of our bad fairies today, then we'll start our warm up exercise with an idea that um, a character has lost something important. So we're going to begin just in that moment of irritation where you're looking for something that should be there and suddenly isn't. And hopefully, I'm sure that's something we can draw on our own experiences for. The annoyance of a lost thing. if you're zooming along fine, then do ignore me. But if your warm-up needs focus, I'm going to suggest your character thinks they found the object. They think they can see it, but when they get closer, it's not the thing they're looking for at all. So we'll have this moment of hope, which is then completely dashed. And now as we come into the final 30 seconds of the warm-up, if this has suddenly taken off for you and feels really good, then just hit pause and keep going for as long as you like. If you're going to finish with me, then in the last 20 seconds or so, we might find somewhere intentional to stop. That might be the end of a sentence, the completion of an idea. We might simply write some bullet points or some keywords down to remind you when you come back to this of what some of your ideas were if you were given more time. And once everyone's caught up with us, we will bring it to a close and turn our attention to two notions really that we're exploring in today's episode. The first thing we're looking at is this idea of bad luck, and that your character will not always be in charge of everything that's happening around them. And some things will happen to them that are simply unfortunate or create extra barriers and challenges to what they want to achieve in their life. And that's really very common across all genres of fiction, that in general, your character must face one defining problem, and with that, a number of additional barriers and challenges. Some of those might be created by the people they encounter. Some of them might be due to their own actions. We need plenty of those for it to be kind of a satisfying, very traditional Western style narrative, which I think is what a lot of people work in. And sometimes they may just experience a series of things going wrong for reasons they cannot really identify. And this also might be where things like the weather and the seasons and the landscape come into play as well. In the Western tradition of fairy tales and folk tales, we often attribute some of these bad luck elements to fairies, to supernatural creatures who are deliberately trying to cause us mischief, to trip us up. So last week we were talking about good fairies, and this week we're very much thinking about little creatures who are following different rules. They have a completely different sense of morality and right or wrong. They are usually hell-bent on destruction, the way a human, sort of different to a human antagonist. A human antagonist would have an identifiable motive, usually, for being someone's antagonist, for wanting to destroy them or screw up their plans in some ways. Fairies just sometimes do it because they enjoy it and they love it. So they're full of spite and mischief. So in that way, they're the personification of our own negative feelings of emotion and the idea that sometimes the universe can be against us and we don't always get what we want. So with today's main workshop, you can lean into the idea of the real fairy interrupting human activity, or you can think of this as a little bit more metaphorical, just the idea that things go wrong, and a way of locating that and identifying that and giving us some language to talk about that. These creatures in fiction will often have a complete lack of understanding of the consequences of their actions. Especially, there's a big tradition of this idea of babies and changelings, and the fairies just like the babies and think they're sweet, so they spirit them away without realizing the effect it will have on their families left behind. These creatures can often shapeshift, so there is a big tradition of meeting fairies who've taken human or humanish forms just for a little bit, just to explore the world. They're extremely territorial, which I think is another way in which they can be very metaphorical for us, right? Because our societies generally are separated into different territories. Land is owned by different people. People have a real affinity and a real care for the land they own, but it can make them incredibly protective of it in a way that can become negative as well as positive. And I'm thinking more on the level here of a field or a garden rather than a country and a border. But we might get that large as well. Fairies are also known for making bargains that have hidden traps or hidden consequences within them. And again, that is a very useful mechanism in a story to drive action forward. So your character might make a deal with someone that seems as if it's going to be in their best interests. And then as the story unfolds, they realize the consequences of this deal. That is actually very common in espionage fiction, where somebody, they might want to get out of a country or change their lives in some way. They think that selling a piece of information will be simple, or a spy might be sent on a mission that they think will be straightforward, and the consequences of that action that kind of unfold and really drive the plot. So we're not only talking about magical consequences here, but we can talk about sort of real world ones as well. And we might see that a little bit in romance fiction, where a sort of early meeting between two people who can love each other goes wrong in some way, or isn't, they don't get from each other what they expect. They then discount each other as romantic partners. They go their own way to do their own thing, partly because of the consequences of that initial meeting, and then come back together later on when they have begun to sort out the sort of truth and the reality. That's enough from me. Let's get to some writing. We're going to the shape of today's workshop is that we're going to imagine an encounter with a sort of a bad force, a horrible human, and how supernatural you want to make that encounter is completely up to you. And if you are someone who likes sticking in the real world, then of course you can do that too. So we're going to imagine a character, and this is a really good exercise if for a character you know well, because it's all about how they deal with things that don't go well for them, which is a fundamental thing for you to know if you're going to write a novel about someone. But if you don't have a character that you're working with at the moment, just decide a name and an age. And the age is only important because um, is a defining feature of a human life. We deal with things differently when we're 23 than when we're 47. And it just helps ground when your character's immediately new and you're making them up, it helps ground you in how they might react and what their life experiences are. Even if they're a very wise and mature young person or a very immature old person, it still helps. So your main character is traveling a road. They're walking along it, and it's a road that they know well. And you can choose whether or not it's a busy urban street and they have errands to run, or whether it's very rural and wild and they intend to walk all day. Your character knows this setting. It's not strange to them. They've been here before and they have certain expectations of it, a level of familiarity. So I'd like you to begin today's writing with your character walking along this road alone and beginning to pick out things that don't seem quite right today. I'll be back with you in about 5 minutes with another prompt, but we'll begin there. A person, a road, and things don't seem quite right today. And now we've been in this place for a while, we have some sense of things being a little bit different. Your main character is going to meet someone coming the other way. And this character is going to ask them for help. And your character will agree to help, and they can do that very, very reluctantly indeed, and object and finally give in, or they might be happy to help. Perhaps the request is not very large, and your character is not in a hurry. So perhaps this initial encounter is quite simple. They meet someone coming the other way, and they are asked for help, a small amount of help. Carry my bags for me. Help me find my purse. I've put it in the wrong place. A small amount of help, and they can agree or disagree. Sorry, they can agree, but reluctantly or happily. And now that your character has helped this random stranger they met on the road, the stranger offers them a reward for helping. Maybe it's a coin, maybe it's a little piece of fruit. They can refuse the gift or accept it this time. So it's completely up to you whether they'll refuse or accept the small token of thanks that they're offered. And now, if we move to the end of that exchange, the help and the offering of thanks, I want you to experiment with the idea that something fundamental changes around these two people, the main character and the stranger. Perhaps the road where they were was quite busy, but suddenly things seem very quiet. Perhaps there's a sudden shift in the weather. It might be something that they notice that seems a little odd, but not completely out of the ordinary. Or it might be something that they feel is very supernatural quite quickly. The idea of falling suddenly into another plane of existence, even though everything around you looks the same. Or tingle in the air that makes you imagine that the rules here might be slightly different. So that's completely up to you. Gravity, weather, time, sound, temperature, perhaps the horizon, what appears in the distance. Something fundamental really begins to shift while these two characters are having their exchange, either with the acceptance of the gift or the refusal of the gift. And now your character is going to continue on their journey alone. And don't worry if you haven't really finished the exchange between the character and the stranger. You can just bring that to an abrupt stop, leave yourself a couple of lines. You can go back and bring it to a more natural conclusion later. For now, what we're going to do is just jump to the point where your character continues to walk along the street that should still be moderately familiar to them, but they've had this slightly odd encounter. Something fundamental feels off about the world now. And that's what I would like your writing to pay attention to, is helping the reader to understand that your character is aware that there's something wrong. They are affected by it, and they are turning all their attention and thoughts to what may be wrong around them. And there are a number of ways that they can react. So let's discover through writing this moment. Are they going to panic, be angry, be fearful, be disappointed, be practical, maybe enter a slight form of denial? These are all things that will show us a little bit more about how they react when things feel very wrong. And now on your journey, I'd like your character to reach some kind of physical threshold. This might be a stream of water. It might be a line of trees. Perhaps it's as simple as a shadow or a low fence. So we're going to approach a physical boundary. And when your character reaches this boundary, I want them to know instinctively that they must not cross this boundary, but that also for some reason they must cross. So going to go with an internal conflict moment. And of course, it might be driven by very awful magic, or it might be a simple moment of indecision and fearfulness or not knowing the right course of action. They want to cross this threshold, this boundary, but at the same time, they feel that there must be a good reason why they mustn't. And for the final prompt of today's workshop, I'm going to give you something you are welcome to either take or leave. So perhaps your character begins to realize immediately why they should never have crossed. Perhaps you want to finish with ramping up those stakes for them. It becomes very, very clear what's on the other side of the fence, what's inside the shadow, what the running water is keeping imprisoned. So perhaps you'd like to finish with a joyful raising of the stakes, a moment of horrific realization. Or if that doesn't match the mood or the tone of what you've produced so far, you can obviously completely leave it. And if you're going to finish with me today, then let's begin to find somewhere intentional to bring it to a close. If this has fired off all sorts of wonderful things in your imagination, then obviously just hit pause and carry on, and I'll be here when you've finished. But other than that, we might want to make some quick notes on things that are in our mind that haven't made it onto the page yet. Don't want to walk away and lose those ideas to the ether. I might just want a list of bullet points, or perhaps you're involved in a lengthy physical description that you want to bring to a close. Or you have a great punchline, fantastic, snappy line at the end. You can spend a few moments to make notes and get all that down on the page. And then once we've done that, we'll begin to read back what we've completed today and reflect a little bit on the workshop and what it might have done for our craft. So the moment of the workshop today, which I think will be most applicable to the most situations of your writing, is that moment of internal conflict where somebody felt that they shouldn't cross the line, but also that they should cross the line. I made that physical for you today in the workshop, but obviously psychologically, emotionally, it happens all the time. Should I say the words that are in my head? Should I bring this person into my secret? Should I trust this character that I haven't met? That I don't have a deep knowledge of. Should I follow these instructions? Is this the quest I should be on with my life at all? Our characters constantly face these little moments of potential indecision and fearfulness and internal challenge. And I spent quite a long time bringing you to that moment today, but as you're reading back, I would suggest that you have a look at that moment of internal conflict and imagine how you might develop it. And perhaps by doing it here today, you'll have warmed up your brain to find it easier to write those moments when you're doing it in the context of a novel or a short story. Because in general, the exercises I do, I'm inviting you to just have some fun and have a play around with your writing. Of course, for me, that's the most important thing. But also, we're also trying to develop a craft where we have skills, and when we meet new situations in our writing, we have like a skill set to explore those, and some language and some kind of go-to tactics and some experience in exploring those already. So I would encourage you to take another look at that moment of internal conflict and see how that appeared on the page for you. Was it actual kind of conversational dialogue-y moment that your character had in their head? Did you describe how they looked externally while they were having this indecision, or were we completely in their thoughts? Did they consider the future, the potential ramifications? Did they explore the past and the moments that had led them here? So it's just interesting to see what might have come out there. But also we can reflect on this idea that we are not in control of the universe, our characters are not in control of their universe, and that historically in fairy and folk tales, we've personified this idea into the image of the bad fairy who wishes you mischief and will bring you bad luck. Whether or not we're dealing with the fantasy and the supernatural, or the real and contemporary, things will go wrong for our characters, and how they react when those things go wrong really tells you a lot about them, and will also drive them in moments when things aren't particularly going wrong. So you might read today's writing and discover a character who's very driven and determined or practical, or perhaps they were very sort of bewildered by the encounter that they had with the strangers. They were befuddled and easily confused and not in control. Well, that will transfer into other situations that you put that character in a short story or a novel. So you can begin to, through these kind of writing exercises, to know a character quite deeply. And perhaps there was someone who just always expects the answer to arrive and someone else will fix it. And the idea of them being the person that can offer help and make things right was quite alien to them. I think that's quite an interesting character for fiction as well. Um, so yeah, we all have days where we feel the universe is against us. Hopefully not in our writing practice. Uh, that was just a quick little investigation into the idea of the bad fairy bringing a character bad luck. And if you haven't already and you'd like to, then you can jump into last week's episode, which was all about good fairies and good luck and more positive things that happen. Thank you for joining me today. I really enjoyed it. I think even though we're exploring some like kind of negative aspects of what can happen to a character, I still think it can be fun, and it can be fun to torture them a little, right? Because they're not real and we made them up. Uh, if you'd like to share this workshop with any of your colleagues or friends who are also writers, then please feel free to do so. The podcast is free. And I'll see you next time.